away we go.
Okay, folks, I'm sure some of you know something about this fair tax business. It's a bill in Congress, been around for about 12 years. They keep trying, they don't get very far. They do have about 66 people in the House who signed on. All but one are Republicans, and 8 people in the Senate. The Senate version is S13. It's a national retail sales tax that's supposed to replace the income tax, payroll taxes, and the estate and gift tax. So that's the basic background to it. I want to start off with one piece of basics, not to get into a lot of detail. We can, but I don't want to take your time with it. But first of all, let's just understand the very basics of how it works. You're going to get a receipt, and I want to show you some of the deception. You're going to get a receipt when you go buy something. It's not going to say, you're not going to say like you see today, price before tax, and then you go to the register, they add sales tax. There's going to be a price on the shelf. But you will know how much tax you're paying, because the way they wrote this statute, when you go to the when you get to the cash register, you will get a receipt, and the receipt's going to look something like this. Okay? Well, the first 4 lines are going to be what the receipt says. It's going to say some more things for state and local sales tax, but the first 4 lines I'm going to show you are what the statute says. The sales receipt that you're going to get says. Line 1 of the receipt is going to be the price of the goods before adding on any tax. $100. Now I'm going to ask you not to embarrass anybody, but they're going to add on the fair tax. How many people think that the next item, the fair tax, is $23? Yeah. Would it surprise you if they fooled you?
No.
See? Line 2, if I could ever... Hey, line 2. The HR 25. I hate calling it the fair tax because you're playing into their game. It's fair only if, like Obama thinks fair is fair. I think it's, so it's HR 25, the House Bill number rule. Okay? You add $30. They do not dispute me on this number. Okay? Line 3 is going to be the total, $130. The fair tax people, the HR 25 sellers, do not dispute these numbers. Now, the next thing that they say goes on the sales receipt is item 4. They say the tax rate is 23%. They don't tell you this thing I wrote on the side in red. It's 23% of the total. They say that the way we've been looking at sales taxes our entire life is just all wrong. Most of us say that the sales tax rate is 30%, don't we? 30 on a pre-tax. They say, no, you're all wrong. You've been looking at it wrong your whole life. You should look at it, thank you. You should look at it to say $30 out of the total is only 23%. What really happened is they were sitting around, a bunch of wise guys, they said, look, nobody's going to swallow 30%. How do we make it sound less? And some smart young CPA said, hey, listen, why don't you just tell them that to look at it the other way, and it's only 23% of $130,000, $130. Okay? And they come up with a cockamamie. When you lie, you have to lie. Understand how politicians lie. When you lie, you have to make it sound good. You have to say, well, we'll call this the tax inclusive method, and the old way is the tax exclusive method. And you should really look at it as a tax inclusive method. I must tell you this. The head of the fair tax wrote a letter to the Wall Street Journal, which they published. I couldn't believe this, that they would publish it and that he would have the stupidity to write this. And his justification for this, and I won't get into it, justification is that, oh, did I do this? Do something else? Okay, the justification for this is that he says it's fair to state the sales this tax on this basis, this all-inclusive basis, because, quote, income tax rates are also stated on an all-inclusive basis, end quote. I've been a tax liar, true, it's true. I've been a tax lawyer all my life. To say that income taxes are stated on an all-inclusive basis is not only just a lie, it's gibberish. To say as a kid, no soap radio. That doesn't make any sense. But the guy said it. Anyway, I have four illustrations of why their rationale makes no sense to me at all, but I won't bore you with it here. The other thing I wanted to show you with this is this. Somewhere on this receipt, because they don't care about how this shows, somewhere on this receipt is going to be the state sales tax. So let's take Tennessee, which has a 10% sales tax rate. That's going to be 10% of item 1. And so the sales tax is going to be, the Tennessee sales tax is going to be $10, and the total will be $140. Now these numbers in red that I show on the side will not show up. So you're going to get a receipt. See, they expect you not to look at the receipt. But there will be 2 tax numbers in there that are based on different figures. The state sales tax is going to be based on item 1, $100, and the fair tax is based on this. But my point is this, which we'll get to later. These numbers are going to increase. This $30 is going to rise. They're lying. That number has to go up. It absolutely has to rise. And so my point is this. I said this on a radio guy, when you go to buy a new car for $50,000, and you look at the receipt and you see, okay, you're not a CPA, but you look at this, you say, hey, the total's $70,000. You say, he says, it's sales tax. $20,000 of sales tax on a $50,000 car. You're going to tell him, well, I would tell him where to park his car, but nicely. You're going to walk out. We're going to have a taxpayer revolt. I gave him the illustration. Well, I'll get to that one later. But people will revolt and see, I don't care if the price goes down by $5, okay? Because nobody's going to know what's going to go. When you see that receipt and you see $40 of sales tax, $140 on $100, you're going to go berserk. And don't forget, our economy is a very retail sales sensitive economy. It cannot tolerate this. Later on, I'll tell you about buying a new house. It gets even better. It gets even better. Okay. Now, I will talk about the economics. I want to talk into two broad categories of things. 2 broad categories of complaints. First is political. When I understand how this thing works politically, I throw up, I say, I don't have to look any further. Okay? Even if you got rid of that, of my political objections, and you get to the economics of this thing, there's not a darn thing about it that makes any sense economically. It's a joke. It's a fraud. So it's political and it's just and it's financial. So don't think if you can get around the politics, the financial stuff doesn't work either. Now on the politics, by show of hands, how many people in this room think that we should use the tax code to increase welfare? Would you count them up for me, Richard? I can't. 0. There, I count that. I can. How many people in this room think they might like the fair tax? Used to. Okay. If you hear a politician like Jimmy Dunn and my guy Phil Rowe, if you have a politician who says who signed on to co-sponsor the fair tax, what they're telling you is they favor using the tax code to greatly expand welfare. And I'll show you how. By the way, before I get off this, just as a sign of their disrepute, this can actually get worse. I read the statute, and I think there's a flaw in the statute. There's a good argument that they have, and they have something on the other side, but there's a good argument that the tax, they're told to be 143, that there could be cascading in here, that you might have to pay the 30% tax on the $10 of state sales tax. But maybe not, but I said to them, I said, listen, if you want to, don't argue with me, just put a parenthetical phrase in the statute and fix this. They said, no, we don't want to fix it. Well, if you're telling me you don't want to fix it, then you're telling me that you're lying to me. You're telling me you need this extra $3 to help pay for the shortfall. Okay? So they're lying. Okay. Now, here's how the politics. Has everybody heard of the prebate? Okay. There's a check that's written to each and every household in America. And there's something clever about that. It's not only given to poor people, they also give a check to wealthy people. Okay? And the point of that is not that they need money, but the point of that is you get everybody receiving a check. And even if they don't need it or it doesn't make a difference to them, they still like getting a check. So they'll support your program if they're getting a check. Right. Okay? Okay. Here's how the prebate works. I'll tell you if you want to hear how I get these numbers, but here are the numbers, okay? For 2012, okay? I have Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like me, retired, the kids are gone, okay? They will spend, they go into Sam's Club and do their shopping for the year, January 1st, 2012. They expend, before tax, before adding on tax, $100,000. That's the cost before tax. They will add on HR 25 tax of 30% or $30,000. Okay? Now, they get a prebate. They will get 12 checks for all of 2012, the total of which are $5,138. I'll tell you later how we get those numbers. You'll see how we get those numbers. So, as we say in accounting, the bottom line here is the Smith family, their tax burden under the fair tax is $24,862. Now, I'm not going to compare it to, it's hard to compare it to what they're paying now because that involves a lot of other subjects. We're looking at the fair tax alone. I'm going to compare this family, to another family. Now, there's a family down the street, not far from us. Husband and wife, young kids, young local kids, 26 years old, live in an old single wide trailer. He makes minimum wage in a factory. Let's say he earns $13,000 a year. He and his wife and 6 kids live in this trailer. They go into Sam's Club and they get to the register, and their cost before fair tax is $10,000, 1/10 of what the Smith family spends. Okay? Their fair tax that they pay, HR 25 tax, is $3,000. Now, pause here. Neither one are going to pay this full amount. Everybody's going to be cheating as much as humanly possible. As much as humanly possible, people will be avoiding the market. So, I speak with respect to Jones, but it also applies to Smith. He's going to pay something between $3,000 and $0. He may not be able to get rid of all of it, but he'll get rid of some of it. So his tax is really not 3, it's between 3 and 0. Now, I want to show of hands. How many of you people think it would be reasonable if he spent 10% of what Smith spent, and if he paid 10% of the tax that Smith spent, then his prebate should be something like 10% of Smith's prebate, so he should get something like about $500 prebate. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? Okay. Now, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath. Okay? Good thing everybody's sitting. His prebate is?
He made a profit?
In spades, he made a profit. Okay? $10,603. Okay? So, this is his deal, and his net is $76.03 plus, and it could range up to $10,603 if he pays no fair tax. So that's the bottom line to him. Now let's go through it. Let's look at this example. I know it's stunning, isn't it? I love this. Okay, he pays 0. We pay him $7,600 to $10,600 each and every year. Now, you say you want more for your money? You say you want more for your money? Not only do we give him $7,600 to $10,600 each and every year, but each and every year we give him a raise on the top number for inflation. Isn't it nice to have inflation protection on your money? Isn't that wonderful? We're very kind and loving people. He needs, one politician, Bill Huckabee's office, I call him, he says, he needs money. So if he needs money, he should get off his tuchus and go get a job.
You know what tuchus means?
Yes. They all know what the word
Yes, we do know what tuchus means.
Yes. Wait, people, I don't want you to go on. I don't want you to go on. I don't want you to go home. Oh, I don't want you to go home unhappy. You say you're not satisfied yet? You say you want more for your money? There's more. Not only do we give him $76 to $10,600 a year, not only do we give him a raise for inflation, but we now give him Social Security and Medicare absolutely free. That is to say, this guy used to pay just about $1,000 a year in Social Security tax. That goes in his pocket. It's out for us. The employer used to give us also about $1,000, actually $995 to be $985, and we lose that. And the theory is, the economic theory says that most of that money will go to him. That employers will likely give that. So between him and his employer, they save the other $1,000. So he's up between $1,000 and $2,000. We are out $2,000. Isn't it nice to be poor in America?
Oh, yeah.
Are you happy with this deal yet? What did they say on television? But wait, if you call today, and just today, for those people who called in today, not only do we give you 76%, not only do we give you inflation, not only do we give you free, but for each and every child that you choose to bless us with, and we know your bent is to have children, but for each and every child you choose to bless us with, we, the idiot taxpayer, will give you $911 more each and every year. Not only that, don't forget, okay, $911 for each and every year for each new child, okay? Don't forget, kiddies, the $911 goes up every year for inflation, okay? And don't forget, you're going to get more food stamps, okay? And don't forget, your Medicare, the doctor's bills and everything, you're going to get more of every other free program we have. What's not to like? How could you not love the fair tax? Mike, what is Mike Huckabee? I understand why Mike Huckabee loves it. What? How could any Republican, how could any conservative person, any human being with half a brain like this? I didn't have to read any further this. We had a convention in Gatlinburg 2 years ago, and I said, listen, I'm a professional with a debate, so let me study the rest of it. But this is what I did for myself. This is crazy. This is what they wanted. This is what they want to ram down our throats. Do you believe this? Is this stunning? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. This is how it works. Now, you can see from the few numbers I've given you, and I can give you more detail, but it works out to $911 for every child and $2,569 for each adult.
And all of this is in HR 25?
It tells you how to do this. I could tell you stories, your rusty hair, like mine, my hair fall out. The statute refers you to certain tables produced by the Department of Health and Human Services. Wicked Witch from Kansas, Kathleen Sebelius. And they published, well, I'll tell you, this group is good. I'll tell you this. They publish statistics that are currently used for a lot of federal programs. And they publish poverty guidelines, okay? These guidelines are based on a 50-year-old back-of-the-envelope formula done by some government economist who thought that poor people's, and I don't know how you define poor people, you have to be careful how the government defines poor people. There's a Heritage Foundation has a great study where they show that the federal government somehow defines poor people as just people, as people in a certain, I think the lowest quintile, the lowest 20%. And Heritage has one thing, Heritage has some fights with Pure Heritage, they're off in a lot of ways, but they have a great study on poverty, where the guy says, these people, that the 47 million in poverty that they're talking about, the federal government, 96 or 7% of them live in homes, or 99% live in homes, own or rent homes, have air conditioning, Xboxes, color TV, big screen TVs. This is, how do you define poverty is an art. But go back for a second, this old government economist said this, came up with this number 50 years ago, and the numbers come up with that they've just been adjusting them for inflation for the last 50 years. Right. So what this table says, what the statute would lead you to, is this. They have spending for an adult and children, and there's a fine point in there. All this welfare is geared to single-family households, which has destroyed the marriage rate in this country and destroyed. But the fair tax adjusts for a two-adult home. Okay. And so the figures are something like this. They say that for an adult, current spending is about $11,000 per adult and $4,000 per child. Think about this. For this guy, this family, they assume that this family is in poverty if they spend less than $46,100 a year. Okay, it's 46, I rounded, the 100 is rounded, okay? And by the way, first of all, if the guy can earn $47,000, he doesn't need my money. Okay? He needs to take care of his own life. Right? And if he doesn't earn $47,000, that's his problem. I mean, I still didn't adopt his children. Right? But imagine a person, this guy spent, that's $47,100 times 23% on the all-inclusive method. If he spends $47,000, including sales tax, including the fair tax, he would pay $10,603, and this is geared to give it back to him, to make him whole. But as a quirk of the language, and you have to have people like me read the statutes, okay? They give it, the table, the calculation assumes that every person spends at the top of that range. This guy doesn't spend $47,000. He doesn't have it. But it pays him as if he spent $47,000. That's why he's making a profit. Only if you work for the government. Only the government can get away with this. This is unbelievable. People don't know where that number comes from. It comes from those poverty tables as adjusted by the fair tax, which assume that that's spending times 23%, and they break it down into adult per child and child. By the way, if you live, I forget which one it was. I don't memorize this. If you live in Hawaii, you get 15% more than this. And if you live in Alaska, it's 25% more. Because it costs a lot of money to live there.
Doesn't cost a lot.
Steve?
Yes.
Nothing new here.
Well, it is nothing new. I mean, these figures shock you. I mean, if you've read it before, but if you haven't seen these figures before, these are shocking.
Well, what I'm talking about, 26 years ago, my cousin,
Yeah.
single mother in New York City,
Yeah.
was living on state and city, and I said, why don't you go to work? She says, in order for her to make as much money, she would have to have a job paying $28,000 a year.
Yeah, it doesn't pay.
So it didn't, so therefore, it doesn't pay for her to work, so she stays home and gets all this
Yeah,
stuff.
but that's what I was talking about on the radio show. The founding fathers saw the welfare system in Europe, especially Benjamin Franklin. And he said that when somebody is poor, you want them to be uncomfortable.
So that they have the motivation to get out of that. You know, Richard, I didn't have a chance to get that with him. But before I left Connecticut, this is just a sample. We had a problem up in the New York metropolitan region. People were collecting welfare in New York, and the same person collected in New Jersey and in Connecticut. Okay? And there was a bill introduced in the Connecticut legislature which said this: let's fingerprint welfare people, and then we'll share the database, and we'll eliminate this fraud. Next day, it was announced in our newspapers that the Connecticut legislature said, we're withdrawing this bill because we're concerned that poor people might be offended at having to be fingerprinted. I guess when I went to become a lawyer and I had to become fingerprinted, I should have been offended. I should have said, no, I'm not going to do this because
That offends me.
you know, we have a saying in New York, which I won't say to polite, Southern people, what they can do with their embarrassment. Anyway, so it's a problem. By the way, I want to cover this one point because we're talking about welfare, and I want to get one other thing in here. You know, people say, I've heard this argument, this guy, it's no big deal that he gets this big refund because he gets refundable tax credits. Everybody know what refundable tax credits are? You know what they are?
Redistribution of wealth.
Right. It's just a welfare check. They gave it a nice name so poor people wouldn't be embarrassed to take it. Okay? You get a check for working. Okay? And you get a check for having children. Well, there's two things I want to point out about this. Okay? This guy, first of all, refundable tax credits are welfare, and it's a roll. And you don't continue a roll. Just because you're doing it now doesn't mean that we should keep doing it, because it's a roll.
The lesser of two evils is still evil.
It's a welfare. It's not an income tax. It doesn't belong in the tax code. It has nothing to do with the tax code. Okay? The refundable tax credits involve substantial fraud. I want to give you this one quick example. You have to write this down. This happens. It's all over the country, especially in a county like mine. Guy comes in. This local guy comes into a tax preparer's office, and he says, "How much do you make?" He said, "Well, I make 20 grand a year." But I fix things. I'm a fixer. I fix things for cash, and I spend my money in cash. How much do you make? 20,000. So I have a wife and 2 kids. Okay? Guy takes that information, puts it into a little form. Okay? The results of that: income tax liability, 0. Social Security and Medicare tax liability, $2,800. Refundable tax credits, $7,800. Guy walks out the door with a check for $5,000. 9 more years of this, and the guy's entitled to a Social Security pension. Okay? I have one, look, I hate to be a picky, nitpicking CPA type, but I do have one tiny little flaw with this. It's a lie. The guy doesn't make a dime. For the first time ever in the history of the Internal Revenue Code, you get a reward for lying. And now I'm also, I did check further, and I'm also told, you go to some of these fly-by-night, they come out of the wall like flies in April, in January, February, March. And a guy will come in who doesn't know this, and the guy will say, listen, I'll get you a $5,000 refund, you give me half. This kind of fraud is unauditable. Unauditable!
Wow.
Okay? And I had a local judge who deals with poor people. He says, these are half the cases of fraud. And 75% of SSI is fraudulent. That's what people, so people say, well, it's not so bad, he's getting refundable tax credits today. It's terrible.
Steve, is that the same thing as earned income?
What?
Earned income tax?
The earned income tax credit and the child tax credit are the two principal refundable tax credits.
Yeah.
This guy, the chances are, I did some numbers, the chances are this guy will make more money from the prepaid. But let's see if I put this on here. This is not enough, there's something even more critical. What this does, what I said to you, it expands the welfare state. Smith today receives refundable tax credits because he works or he lies and says he's working. Okay? The problem is that the prebate is paid to everybody, whether or not they work. In effect, what they've done is they've expanded refundable tax credits to a gigantic new class of welfare recipients, the non-working poor. So, I mean, and people don't see that. It's a new class of welfare recipients. How can you do this? This doesn't make any sense at all. There was a hearing, I missed this, I didn't know about it in advance, but let me get through this, the treasurer won't take it. The House Ways and Means Committee held the hearings on the fair tax. Mike Huckabee and two economists that were paid by the fair tax people were up there, and there was one guy speaking against it, fourth guy was speaking against it. And Huckabee's selling and selling and selling. My favorite comment up there was some of the Congress people, some of the people on the committee, the House Ways and Means Committee. And by the way, Diane Black is from Nashville, and we met her, but I didn't get a chance to talk. It was a Christmas party. I didn't get a chance to talk to her about this, but she was sitting there, and I don't think she'd understood. Well, it's not a criticism. I mean, she's a real person. She's not attacking. You have to be one of us crazy people to understand this stuff. But she didn't speak. But a few of the tax people, and one of the speakers from the committee was one of my favorites, Charlie Rangel, the former head of the House Ways and Means of New York. Now he got up. Harry got up. And by the way, you can see that video. It's 2.5 hours. You can fall asleep, but you can just look at it for some of it. 2.5 hours. It's still on the House Ways and Means website. July 26, 2011. Charlie Rangel got up, and he was choking. He said, "You want us to enact a $1 trillion new welfare?" Now his number was wrong. It's only about $0.5 trillion. But still, I mean, Charlie Rangel, Mr. Giveaway, Mr. Democrat himself, is choking on it, and yet we had Dr. Price from Atlanta, from Georgia, gets up and says it's wonderful, it's going to cure cancer, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. He drones on, and Huckabee screams, and Charlie Rangel is choking. How do we not get a clue? Charlie Rangel's choking on it, on this kind of entitlement. Where are the Republicans? Why are there 74 Republicans in the House and the Senate that sign on to this? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Representative Pascal from New Jersey, who's now fighting for a seat, he said the fair tale is a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. He gets it. The Democrats get it. Listen, I'm going to run through something. I won't just run through this. This is just some highlights, some economic highlights of even I got even one guy who's head of the fair tax in Tennessee at this debate. He admitted to me privately. He says, "Well, maybe the prebate's got to go." Well, it still stinks. Okay, so the 30% tax will go down to a 24% tax before they start raising it up to all kinds of numbers. So there's no you can't fix stupid. It's just impossible to say. Okay. But the economics, I want to run through this, and then we can talk about maybe some other ideas. They have, this tax base is extremely broad. It includes 80% of the economy. And nobody in the world, no country or state in the world is trying to tax 80% of your economy. And probably with good reason, because people won't sit still for it. So it's an unreal, people will resent it because it taxes everything they do. This is a bit of a tremendous flaw. It is their calculations assume there's going to be no tax evasion. And it's only on the planet Uranus that there will be no tax evasion. But where we live, there's going to be incredible evasion. Okay, incredible. And they say, no. Oh, and let me just say this. They say they're only going to audit Walmart. Baloney. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. It's insane. Every writer that I've seen who was not paid by the fair tax says what I know intuitively is that the people are going to evade this tax to a fairly well. They're going to do everything in their power to evade this tax. Okay? And when the tax dollars don't come in, first of all, by the way, the latest economic paper that I saw said that because they needed to raise the rate to 35, but they were not going to do that. Okay, to equal the revenues, and they were going to that would force Congress to reduce spending. Right. Yeah, right. So the latest calculations, the 30% tax does not make up for lost revenues. Anything that doesn't come in, the 30% that they have that doesn't come in, the rate has to go up. The rate just has to rise. Okay. Oh, it's going backwards. Okay, here we go. Okay. There are hidden taxes in this thing that you have to sift through to understand. They first said, their first baloney, which their economists later admitted to, they first said prices will remain the same before and after. That the 30% tax will replace the currently embedded taxes. And the guy, their own economist, Dale Jorgensen of Harvard, came out and explained why that was nonsense. He said prices are going to go up, and they're going to go up by almost the full amount of the fair tax. There might be a little savings in tax compliance costs, maybe, but it's going to be small. So prices are going to go up. In order to make this, I said to you a minute ago that the base is so broad. The base includes the state and federal government. What I mean by that is the state and federal government have to pay fair tax on all of their purchases except teachers' salaries in order to make their numbers work. In order to get the revenue they need, the state of Tennessee is going to have to pay a sales tax, 30% sales tax, on all of its purchases except teacher salaries. People, when Tennessee has to spend that additional money, who's going to give them the money to pay it? Look in the mirror. So while you're paying a 30% federal tax, you're going to have to pay more state taxes to pay the state share of the federal tax. Now, the federal government also has to pay 30% sales tax on all its expenditures except for teacher salaries.
They're going to come to us too.
Well, they come to us either directly or indirectly. Either they come to us and they charge us a higher rate. They won't do that because that gets in our face. What they'll do is they'll borrow more money if the Chinese lend it to them. And if not, they'll print more money, which taxes you via inflation. So one way or another, they're going to take the money. They're saying that the federal government's paying taxes revenue. So wait a minute, taking money from this pocket and putting it into this pocket is revenue? Please, I was born at night, but not last night. Okay, it's the same. Now, there's more to it than that. There's an automatic adjustment here for Social Security. If prices go up, and they knew all along that prices were going to go up from day one. That's why they were lying to us. They were lying. They knew prices were going to go up. They put a provision in this thing, Richard, there's a place they lied. They knew all along prices were going to go up. That original story that prices was a lie. They knew it. They put in a provision which says, yes.
And to back on to that, when they first came out, and Neil Bortz and all these other people, John Lender, they were saying that prices are going to go down sometimes as much as 25%. That's how it was originally sold over the air.
And a few years ago, Dale Jorgensen, their economist that they paid, said that the only way that's going to happen is if you give up your raise. They were telling you get a raise, you get your gross pay now, and prices go down. No, it's the only way prices go down is if your new gross pay equals your old net pay. So he said, and it's not going to happen. People will not stand for that. Okay, so the prices go up. There's a hidden tax in state governments, federal governments, and their bill has a specific provision. When prices go up, people like me and old Mark here will get an automatic COLA adjustment in our Social Security. That's additional federal spending. Where's the federal government going to get the money to do that? And here's my favorite hidden tax. Some of you, Mark, Mark paid taxes all his life, and he saved all his money now, and he's paid full income tax, okay? Now, when he goes out and spends money, when he goes out and spends money, all of you who've saved money, you've paid your income tax, you're going to pay fair tax on it now. You're going to pay fair. There's no exemption. There's no carve out for income on which you pay. And by the way, there could be a third tax. You could have your father could have had paid income. Your parents could have paid 70. I prepared tax returns with 70% tax rates. And federal tax rates were 92% at one point. So your parents could have paid 92% tax rate, okay, income tax rate to the federal government. If they lived in New York, they paid another 10 or so, but that was deductible, so they would have paid a net, about 94. Now the six that was left, your parents could have also paid an inheritance tax of half of that. And now when you spend the $3 that's left, you're going to pay fair tax.
Oh boy.
Which is 23%.
Of the total. So, I mean, but see, they don't, you need somebody like you to figure that nonsense out. And this is what they're trying to send you.
It's just like Sweden.
What's it? Worse.
Worse.
Okay. My big point here is the sticker shock. The sticker shock. Even by the way, even if prices go down, which they won't. Even if the prices, nobody's going to know what the price was yesterday. People, you see, they're hiding it in the receipt. You saw that receipt I showed you before? It doesn't say 100. You're not going to look at something on the shelf and say $100, and the person's going to add $40 in the register. You're going to see it. You're going to see it all on tape, but you'll have to look, and you'll have to remember. Wait, the 23% is not 23%. Look at the dollars. They want to fool you. They don't want to make it obvious to you. They want to hide it. So, well, when
They're trying to tell you that 30% is really 23%, and don't let the numbers fool you.
Right. They try to fool people. His spies know how many. I had a lawyer at the convention. I had a lawyer who said to me, "Steve, you're wrong. It's not 30. It's 23. The statute says 23." I said, "Yes, moron." I didn't say moron. I was trying to be nice to him. I said, "Yes, the statute says 23. But 23% of what?" He looked at me. What do you mean? A lawyer. Read the statute. 23% of the total, including the sales. I mean, this is it. You have to read. You have to read this thing. You people all know how to tell. You know how to tell when an American politician is lying, don't you? Whenever his lips are moving. Okay.
Are you implying that
Purchase of a new home. I want to just give you this. Well, let me show you this. I'm going to make it worse. Let me go to. Let me go to the slide. Okay. Well, I'll come in. I'll explain this. The loans. Let's take. You people can handle a few numbers. You buy a $500,000 home. Okay. $500,000 home, and let's just be simple. Let's add 40% for 30% and 10% Tennessee tax. Okay? So it's $700,000. Okay. For a home that should cost you $500,000, it's now going to cost you $700,000. First of all. Now I want to focus on the down payment. The banks are now saying they now say they want not 20% but 30 or more. You know that? The banks are asking more than 20% down payment. So you're not going to. I have a great illustration, a great little thing for a movie in my book. It's a great for a TV show. But you got to read it. It's very fun. But you now have for a house that now costs $700,000. Your down payment is not 30% for $700,000. Because the banks are not going to lend you any money on fair tax. You're going to have to come in with 30% of $500,000 to $150,000, and you're going to have to come in with 100% of the sales tax, $200,000. So this $700,000 house, you're going to need a down payment of $350,000 to buy a $700,000 house. Now, how many people think that's going to be good for the mortgage market and good for the housing market? Huh?
Kill it.
I think it's good. You know what a professional's answer to me was this? One guy who's, "Oh no, they won't do that. We'll figure something. We'll figure something.
Yeah.
Government will do something. The government will do something. We've done enough to us already. But if they do any more to us, we won't have anything left for them to do to." Can you imagine that? They won't lend you money, and I explain this, I even have this in your summary. I thought about this, I surprised even the economist who wrote a paper for the home building industry, and I called my own banker, and we talked about this. There are too many tax risks. The fair tax can go away, the home builders can get an exemption for new homes, or my favorite is they're not getting enough revenue and they eliminate the exemption for used homes, for existing homes. When that happens, the differential in price goes away and the mortgage is underwater, so the bank is not going to lend on the fair tax. No way. So, I mean, this is economic lunacy. My favorite, what is this? The IRS is dead. Wrong. The IRS, there's a new agency, the Sales Tax Administration Authority, STAA, and sometimes it will be administered by your state, and in some states will be administered by the federal government. The states that don't have a the states that have a sales tax will probably take on the job of the federal government, but they'll be the auditors. They're not going to just audit Walmart, okay? They can't do that. There's a whole lot that has to be audited. For one thing, the easiest thing for me to explain to you is this: Social Security. Today, Social Security is still based on earnings, okay? And there's a prejudice in there why you don't want to inflate earnings, because the more earnings you show, the more payroll tax you pay, and the more withholding you're supposed to make. So that naturally keeps down the amount of, and still they audit those things. If we have a fair tax, and watch this sneaky thing, they're not proposing to change Social Security still based on earnings. As in the future, they'll just get rid of earnings, one step at a time. In the future, everybody gets Social Security without working. But for now, they still work. So now, but now you have your own business, Richard, and you say, listen, Richard, do me a favor, put me down on the payroll for 50 grand. I need some Social Security. Now there's everything in the world to defraud the federal government on having payroll tax filings. So who's going to audit that? The post office? That has to be audited. And there's tons and tons and tons of things that have to be audited. If President Romney would call me up and say, Steve, how do we make sure that we don't lose revenue through people buying on the black market? Is there any way we could do that? I said, yes, there is. There's only one way. Very simple. Very simple. You have to take the Internal Revenue Service, the agents. We call them the Infernal Revenue Service instead of the Internal Revenue Service. The Infernal Revenue Service, so they're right. The Internal Revenue Service is dead, but we now have the Infernal Revenue Service. And they come to your house, Richard. They come to your house. They say to you, they say, okay, Richard, I want to see all of your financial records, your earnings, your checkbooks, your investment statements, everything you have. And I want to solve financially, I want to solve for the total amount of your spending for the year, of how much money you save, and I need to know how much money you spent. Okay? And then I say to you, Richard, thank you, now that we see you spent $100,000, show me receipts. And what you don't have receipts for, you owe me tax on. It's the only way to assure revenue. And even that's not going to work 100%, but that will keep the revenue somewhat. So, to me, that's a whole lot more. Now, I don't think they'll ever do, because they're afraid to do that. But that would be a whole lot more intrusive than what even the Internal Revenue Service does today. So, people, that's in a nutshell. I have in the full paper, which I allude to in my executive summary, you can see I back up every argument I make, every single part. I want to tell you one more I didn't put on here. They say, oh, the criminals now pay tax. Tony Soprano now pays taxes. Don't you want to do that? Well. Yes, but don't forget, Tony Soprano pays tax today. You know, he lives in a house, he probably pays $100,000 a year in property taxes up there in New Jersey. And he probably shows $1 million a year. He doesn't pay tax on the other $3-4 million. Because you have to show a lifestyle. You can't live in a house like that and show $30,000 a year in income. So he probably pays $1 million. We lose that. We lose about $300 grand in taxes for him a year. He pays some tax through his purchases, the embedded taxes, a little bit, 5 or 10%. He's going to buy the black. He could go on the black market. He's going to go and spend his money in Europe. Okay. Even if you assume that Tony Soprano is going to pay $100,000 a year more in taxes, suppose we have 100,000 Tony Sopranos across the country. Okay. So he's going to pay. So there's going to be $100 billion that we're going to collect in taxes. That's what they tell you. They don't tell you the number. I just made up a number because I'm a CPA part, but that part of my brain says you've got to come up with a concrete example to illustrate the point. So we collect $100 billion. But wait, what about the other 320 formerly law-abiding citizens? Suppose each one of them avoids $1,000 in tax. That's 320 billion. So some criminals, they pay a few more dollars, but in toto, we lose. You know, you're watching this shell, but you're not watching what's happening over here. They say trillions of dollars are going to come in from overseas. From where? What is this? What are you talking about? Are you talking about people who have cash in Swiss bank accounts? There probably is a little bit of that in the Cayman. There's probably a little bit, not a whole lot. Oh, how about corporations? Well, a few years ago they did a thing that corporations could bring back some tax at 5.25%, a low rate. They brought in $360 billion. They collected about $20 billion in tax. Ooh, big move. And now there's an article recently, Apple, there's a bunch of companies have 100, 200 billion over there they bring back. So, you don't, and here's the other part of the fallacy. You don't need the fair tax. Just eliminate the tax on corporate repatriation. That's all. You don't need the fair tax to accomplish that, but they want you to think, oh, you got to take that. If you want this, you got to take it. You don't have to take that. You get rid of the corporate income tax. You don't need to adopt the fair tax. Anybody have questions about the fair tax? I'll move on to some answers that I think I have. But anybody have questions about the fair tax or things that they think that they...
Well, Ford says in order to do this, that you have to have a constitutional convention to get rid of the 16th Amendment.
Yes.
He says that on the radio all the time.
He's pushing for that, right?
Yeah,
Oh, he wants that.
And Cain, same thing. Herman Cain.
Yes.
And I'm like, are you people out of your mind?
It does.
They are, I mean, not only are they pushing this, but they would open it up to where the whole, anything that's left is totally destroyed.
Yeah.
So,
Right. This would destroy us. And you understand, Herman Cain, when he talks about 999, he knows he can't get you to the fair tax today. So his 999, the third leg, is a 9% national sales tax. And he says to you, that 999 with that is phase 1, and this is phase 2.
He freely admitted that with some of his campaign events. And he even said that.
We have a guy running for the Senate here. I don't mean to, but I caught hold of Zach Postovich.
yeah, that's pushing 999.
He's pushing 999, and
Did
after
you straighten him out?
what?
Did you straighten him out?
Well, let me tell you, you'll have to forgive me, okay? I tried to get to him, and his people knew that I was coming. There was a fundraiser, and nobody was coming, so they said, "Oh, we bought tables. Just come, don't pay me." So I went just to try and talk to him, and it's like there was. I think there were few people that are sitting in this room, and so I went over to him, and he says, "No, I can't talk to you now. I'm busy." And then I went over to him after he spoke, and there was nobody around him, and he says, "I'm busy." And it's only because another person who was then supporting him, who we stayed with for 3 days, said, "Oh," and she told him 3 days before that, but she came to this function, and she said, "Zach, you need to talk to Steve. He understands this stuff, and you got to listen to him." Finally, he comes over to me. I explained to him for a couple of minutes. He was arrogant. He really didn't listen. I sent him my 2-page paper, my executive summary. He says, "I'll read it this weekend." He sent me an email. Never heard from him. Never heard from the guy. And then I find out afterwards that this woman had told him 3 days before she was at, I gave a speak to her group up in Johnson City, and she told him, she says, "Our friend Steve Eldridge came and gave this," and he said, he explained it to us, and nobody likes it. Did Zach say, "Give me Steve's number, I need to talk to him and figure out and understand this"? No. No. And I'm not chasing him anymore. Okay? I tried. So the longer answer is, I tried. He doesn't want to. Herman Cain doesn't want to hear this. I met Herman Cain at the SRLC, and he says, "You don't like it, why don't you like it?" Now, he was walking up to give his speech in a breakout session. I said, "Herman, rather than do it in 6 seconds, let me send you my paper." I sent him the full paper. I sent it to him, never heard from him. I saw him up in Rogersville. I was right next to him. I gave it to with my card. I gave the 2-page executive summary to his deputy. Never heard from him. Never. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. Yes?
This seems to me that all of this shenanigans legitimizes all the extra constitutional spending that they're doing already.
Like the BBA.
What is it?
Unconstitutional spending.
They want this. They want to exacerbate the welfare state and keep. Well, this doesn't raise any more money, but it redistributes. It makes George Bush. I loved him, but whatever. Progressive. This makes the code more progressive than it was before you. Yes.
American guns.
Yeah.
They're wrong.
What's that? I'm wrong.
I give you that. What is the solution?
Oh,
We are
I
in
don't-
a big,
Okay,
big mess.
okay, here's the solution. You ready for the solution? I'm going to tell you the near-term solution is not, it's not a good answer. I'm going to tell you what the real answer is. So stay with me, because you have to keep the real answer in mind. It's a little more shocking, but it's the only I have the only solution that meets the Tea Party's Contract from America's its basic point, its requirement on taxes. For those of you, I'm sure you've all read it. It has 10 things about limited government, one on taxes. The Tea Party's Contract from America rejected the fair tax. Rejected the fair tax. On taxes, they say we want a tax system that is fair and simple and has fewer words than the 4,500 words of the Constitution. I have it. Okay, I'll give it to you tonight. If you stay with, that's a teaser like they do on Fox, right? But for the moment, but for tomorrow, what are we going to do tomorrow, Mark? And I have an answer for that. Not a good answer, but an answer that is less objectionable than what everybody wants to move to. The least problematic answer, and that is a very, 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 very flat income tax. I would get rid of the corporate income tax. We're paying the corporate income tax by way of higher prices right now. So get rid of it, we'll pay it, and now we know what we pay. Okay? Get rid of it. There'll be a nice saving in administration and in harassment. That will go to our benefit. Get rid of the corporate income. If anything, maybe have a small export tax. Let the British pay our tax. An export tax that doesn't increase prices, but one that's targeted to replace the income and payroll taxes paid by people who export. Okay? So, but that's not going to be a big dollar number. At least a little bit, but not a lot. It's good. So get rid of that. Have an income tax. One rate, people. You have 50 different flat income taxes, and they're all wrong. They're all ridiculous. One rate, not 2 or 3. One tax rate for everybody.
How much?
I don't know, whatever it has to be. Whatever it has to be, but it's 15, 20%, whatever it is, it is. That's what it is. Okay? Now, here's what people will choke. What, not us, but what the people, your people in Congress will say. No deductions, no exemptions, no refundable tax credits for the like. Everybody pays on $1. Everybody pays the same rate on $1. It's not the right answer. You know, why should Warren Buffett pay $3 million and some bum pay $3? Why? Did Warren Buffett do something wrong? Tell me, I'll come to it. Let me come to that. I'll get to that. Okay? No deduction, no refundable tax credits. Everybody, I would do some other things. I would first of all, I'd try to put an inflation adjustment on sale on assets. First of all, I wouldn't tax the gain on sale on your home. I wouldn't tax Social Security. That's a ripoff. You shouldn't tax it. And you know something? If you agree with me, and I think you should on taxing inflation, I think we should have zero tax. All of our IRAs should be Roth IRAs. No tax ever. Because when you get through with inflation, you know, it doesn't matter. Yes, there'll be some income, but over inflation, but not a lot. It doesn't pay. It's not worth the effort. I would exempt from taxation all retirement savings. Okay? And I do some other things. I would avoid double taxation, corporate and individual. You know, they have to monkey around with it a little bit. But a simplified definition of income and one rate. And that's it. All these clowns like Steve Jobs and even Newt Gingrich, you know, we'd have a $40,000 exemption for a family of 4. Or, you know, come on, give me a break. We can't survive with half the people paying no income tax. Everybody has to pay tax. And yes.
Absolutely disagree. In 1974,
You could be wrong. You have the right to be wrong.
Orwin Schiff published a great book called The Biggest Con.
Yeah.
And in that book, he clearly shows that personal income tax is illegal, unconstitutional, and should not be levied on people at all.
I agree, but we got to raise taxes. But let me get to it. I'll come to that. I'll deal with that.
Fruits of our labor.
I'll deal with that. That's my income. That's my current answer. And I promised you that you have to watch the long term. And here's my long term answer that meets the only one that meets the Tea Party's contract for America. Step back for a second. I won't take the long. I'll say the short version. What are we doing? Why do we raise taxes? Why do we have taxes? Why?
To pay for the army, to pay for interstate commerce, and to pay for the Navy.
And not to control interstate commerce, to facilitate
To
interstate.
keep it regular.
Keep roads and airways open.
Okay, that's the right answer. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. I bet you know the answer, but I'm going to ask you because I want to say something. Do you have is there any formula? Is there any other limitation that we know about other than verbiage? Is there any formula by which we can tell how much Congress should be spending on these things?
1% per enumerated power.
No. There actually is something. There actually is something. God bless him. You know, the Constitution has another set of documents. The original, the prospectus for the Constitution. There is a prospectus. The Federalist Papers. Written solely for the purpose to convince us to sign on to this thing. I had to give a talk to my local Tea Party about federal spending. And so, what do? I'm like, you do research. It's like, look through something. You bet, the death list. How many people in this world would read the Federalist Papers on taxation? Not many. You have to be very weird. So I read something. And I found God. I found God. Write this down. Federalist Paper, number 34. Please, write that down. Federalist Paper, number 34. Very short. Alexander Hamilton, God bless his soul, I'm allowed to say that here. He said, people, besides all these lawyers' words, let me give you an illustration that shows you just how limited federal government spending is supposed to be. He said, for the purpose of illustrating spending, for purpose of illustrating spending, we're going to look to the example of King George. That's the only reason we're going to look here. And what did King George, when King George took all the money he extracted from us, from the people, he spent 15/16 for the lawyers, that's 93 1/3%, on the military, and only 1/16 or 6 2/3% on everything other than the military. Case closed, directed verdict for the taxpayer. Nothing more to discuss. It's over. The federal government now spends something, the budget of the non-military budget should be something, under that formula, should be something like $50 billion. You know what it is? It's $3 trillion.
And they call that discretionary.
And they have the chutzpah, as you were trying to say, they have the chutzpah to say, oh, we passed a rule this year in Congress before we passed any bill. We're going to review it for its constitutionality. So it's like giving, you give the rabbi $50 and he says that ham is kosher for Passover. Yes, it's constitutional. Yes, Richard.
I was just going to make a point. There's some of us in the Tea Party that believe Hamilton didn't die young enough.
Yeah.
Since he was a
Central bank.
Listen.
Just wait a minute.
Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Well, still yet, I think he was one of the cancers of America. But if you go back to the budget of the year 2000, you could go back to that budget and eliminate the income tax. You don't need it. And at that point in time, it was only enough money to pay the interest on the debt to the Federal Reserve. You eliminate the Federal Reserve, you eliminate the IRS. Forbes magazine came out and said if you eliminated the income tax and had no tax at all directly on your income, you'd have the largest economic boom in American history.
Well, I hear what you're saying.
Or in the world, actually.
Richard, I've got to go through those numbers. I'm not against having. I'm not in favor of having a tax system. I think we'll leave it. But let me try to adjust what you're saying. If we, using my formula, if we got the military budget down to roughly 7% of the total, the non-military budget down to roughly 6.2% of the total, the total budget would be lower. Okay. Now there are. I don't know. I saw two different sets of figures. The excise taxes are very small. They're not. We don't raise $1 trillion in excise taxes. Okay.
Well, still, yeah. I mean, there's so much you could.
Yeah, you can't. You can only do so much with an excise tax. But let me. It's not that I'm against what you're saying. Let me get there. First of all, get the budget down to what the Constitution says, and get the. Maybe the military we don't need to spend $1 billion. I want to spend money on. I want to have the finest military in the world. but I want it to be run like they run, Home Depot. To run efficiently like a business would, not like the government runs it. And get the spending down. Then we know what we needed. Now, I have trouble with the Constitution with certain things. I don't think that we should collect I don't think excise taxes is the way to do it either.
Well,
I'll tell you. Let me give you an answer. It's not that I don't like. I think that's wrong, because if he spends $1 million and he pays heavy excise taxes and you spend $10, why should he pay more tax than you do? My point is this. I'll come around to it. I'm not going to not this way. We'll come back. The point is, we have to look at. We got off the boat in Plymouth Rock, and we were a bunch of people. You want to farm, and I want to build houses. We need a couple of guys to work full-time to protect us from the Indians and the British. We have to pay them. We have to pay them. Okay, what is that cost of the military? Remember, 93 1/3%. It's our common cost, like any other condominium or cooperative. We're a cooperative, and that's a common cost. How does your condominium allocate common costs? Well, I won't give you the accounting answer, but they basically say in English, you look at how much do you impact the cost of that cost, that central cost, relative to me. What do you do to push up the cost of that compared to what I do? And you pay your relative cost and I pay my relative cost. Think about it going to dinner. What did you order and what did I order? That's how a condo will say if you have a 1-bedroom unit, you take less maintenance than a 2-bedroom unit, so you have less impact on the total cost of maintenance. So a 1-bedroom unit should pay less than a 2-bedroom unit. I mean, it's not perfect. They can't do it perfectly, but that's the essence of how a condominium allocates cost. They don't give the bill to the richest guy in the building. They allocate it according to relative impact on the cost. So, how much do you impact the cost of the military compared to me? It's the same.
Yeah.
Here's what I promised you. Here's the tax. You can write this down. We take the federal budget and allocate that equally to each of the 320 million American citizens and residents. So that's sentence 1. Sentence 2. Comma onto that. The tax of any person under age 26 shall be the responsible of both their parents, jointly and severally. 2. The tax will be paid by a monthly debit to your checking account. Paren. For those who don't want the federal government debiting their checking account, the federal government shall make reasonable accommodation, but the taxpayer shall pay the cost of such additional accommodation. Close paren. Period. End of tax law. You get a bill every month for your equal share, your fair share of the national bill. And that's what your tax is. And I think that's better that's more fair than an import duty. Because one of us might pay more than the other. And we shouldn't. We have an equal impact on the cost of the bill. There's no reason for any American citizen to pay any more than anybody else.
If we're talking about military,
Yeah.
and most of that should go towards military expense, then Warren Buffett has much more to lose.
He has more.
If there is an invasion or something like that, then I do.
I've got that argument. He's got houses. Listen, it doesn't cost any more to protect his house.
This is a means of income. It's not just houses.
Mark,
That's how he makes money.
Mark, point is, what the federal government is protecting, the overwhelming portion or the concept of what they're protecting is Warren Buffett's life and his liberty. And it doesn't cost him any more to protect his 3 yachts than it does to protect his life. That's the key. It doesn't cost any more. The fact that he has more to lose does not mean that he does anything to run up the cost of the military any more than I do. His owning 6 mansions doesn't require another aircraft carrier because I don't have any homes. That has no impact on the cost. And conceptually, it's his liberty, and my liberty is equal to his liberty. We are a cooperative. And Richard, that's my only. I hear this thing about import duties. And there's something wrong with import duties. I think it's politically expedient because people don't see it. But I want all taxes to be obvious and transparent. But I don't want them to hurt you every time you go make a purchase.
Well, during the time of our nation's history, most Americans were self-employed anyway. They were doing things that, bringing in goods and things like that.
Yes.
At the turn of the century, even 1900, 98% of America was self-employed,
Right.
farms or
Right.
some type of business, and now everybody's employed for the most part.
But everything under the import system, everything that we import, that tax that's paid gets paid by the ultimate consumer. And some people will consume more and some people will consume less. It was a good tax only because people didn't see it, they didn't object to it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if we go at a low rate, it'll eventually get to where it is now.
No. No, because under my system, nobody did the math. I want to get to your question. Nobody did the math. Under today's system, I want to take this.
Do you know that we're still paying for the French and Indian War?
Oh,
Not the French and Indian War, but the...
I'm sure we are.
1812?
Under your
Spanish
No.
American.
under the
they
current.
put a tax on
Oh.
the phone lines.
World War I.
Maybe it was... No, it was a... Anyway, we're still paying for a
Yeah, I
war
understand. But under
on the
today's
phone bill.
under our system, under my system, the federal government, your share of the $3.8 trillion budget, $13,000 for each and every member of your family, for each and every American. And it's bad enough that it's going to be hard for some people to pay that. But that's not the biggest tragedy. The biggest tragedy is Congress is spending it. They're spending 13 grand. If you want to just get it down to today's revenues, the $2.4 trillion we're paying, it's about $8,000 for every person. Under mine, I think we can get it down to about $2,500 per person. Okay, but the point is, you pay it once a month. It's paid, and it's like the rent. You see it, you know what you're paying. But the point of my system is, with everybody paying it, every single American paying it, we will all be parked in your congressman's office, and we would sit in Congress, and they don't go home, they don't eat, they don't go to the bathroom until they make substantial progress. We would all be then involved. Every American would then be affected when Congress spends another buck. So if they want to spend $3,000 per person, that costs everybody, and people will be screaming, and more people will, because more people are paying that $3,000. More people will be there complaining to Congress, and that will keep that budget down. Having $320 million keep pressure on their congressmen, that is what will keep that's what will keep total spending down. Right now, half of them are saying spend more, and there's only a few of us saying spend less. But if everybody's in there saying spend less, we have a chance. That's my point.
Yeah, what about the illegals?
Well, that's another. Listen, I'm all for personal liberty, but I think we have to know who's in this country.
No kidding.
Okay? I think we need identity cards, and I think we need to know. And I don't care about show me your papers. I have to show my driver's license. I couldn't believe
You have
this.
an operation.
You know, I want to tell you something. This thing about voting, I had to laugh. A couple of weeks ago, I returned something in Walmart for $11, and the woman asked me to show my picture ID.
Did she ask the Mexican funny?
No. So listen, I think we need an ID, and we should know who every illegal is, and they go to the back of the line, and they back of the line, and we, no amnesty. We give them a pathway, but it's going to be a law. They have to pay a fine. You do not ever reward breaking the law. Richard, I've been putting up your question.
Okay, well, it's like a two-part question.
You got three. You bring three.
Okay, first part is, when the Founding Fathers set up the import duty
Yes.
tariffs, okay, that was to give the American manufacturers equal playing ground. Because a lot of it was coming into this country, like the Chinese stuff, okay?
Yeah.
It's unfair against any manufacturer to deal with cheap Chinese labor. Totally unfair. Because you can't take an American who has to have a living wage so he can provide food for his family, a home over his head, transportation to and from work, energy costs that are necessary, okay? And here you're competing against labor that's $1 a day.
Yes.
Or $2 a day. Okay? So the free trade, I mean, I think every American that loves this country and loves what we've accomplished, okay, all our engineering feats, our automobile industry, our airplane production industry, is now threatened by free trade. Okay? Now, to The second part of the question,
Yeah,
The second-
that crap too.
yeah, you're right. You know, the politicians opened up the patent bureau for the Chinese and the Russians
Oh,
to
yeah.
come in and take whatever our engineers and our inventors and gave it to them.
Yeah. Which is,
And the thing that really ticks me off,
Well,
being in the
fair
Air
experience.
Force, was when Bill Clinton gave them ICBM missile guidance systems.
yep,
Okay? I was there when it happened, and that's what part of my job was to protect those things to and from the logistics
you
of it.
can't fix stupid.
Okay? Now, not only should we, I'm a proponent, not only should we get rid of the free trade agreements, because they haven't done us any good. They screwed us over royal. They screwed the American worker over royal. But to make things equal and fair, give the American manufacturer the same footing that all these import duties are bringing.
But be careful, though, Richard. You got to be careful with that, because once the government starts to monkey in the private sector, you know, it's called competition. If the Chinese can build stuff cheaper without stealing it from us, if they steal it from us,
But they've stolen it from us.
well, then fix the stealing. But don't. It's wrong to just put on tariffs just to make their goods cost as much, because then you start protecting American industry, and may even violate international
That's what
agreements.
we used to do. We used to protect American industry.
Right.
Well, but
That was our country. It helped us.
Well-
Now it's killing America.
well, it helped to get the country started, but it's a dangerous thing to do.
Oh, I disagree.
Because if you, well, that, you know, the problem right now, Congress is protecting some businesses versus other businesses. If you protect American businesses too much, then it's the consumer who needs the protection.
Corporate fingers are in the.
Okay,
It's hard.
okay,
This is not a simple problem. I'm sorry.
okay, it's not a simple problem, but it really is a simple fix, okay?
You have to turn it around.
We need to get rid of the lobbyists. The lobbyists should not be able to walk down the halls of Congress without being shackled and thrown in jail,
I can't even get in Congress.
okay?
I should be a
Okay,
lobbyist because I'm a taxpayer.
and them picking the winners and the losers in the economy is the same thing as meddling.
Absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely.
So, my
Wonderful.
passion is this. Get rid of the lobbyists,
Yep.
bring in protection for American business, get rid of all this free trade agreements, okay?
Yep.
Okay? And if our products are superior, and if our design and our engineering is superior, if our software to run our computers is superior, then they can pay us
That's right.
for our labors.
That's right.
Okay? If we take a look at the inflation factor, what has happened to our labors and how they've cheapened our labors. Okay? You take one U.S. gold coin, it's worth how much of this funny money we got in our pockets?
$1,600.
$1,600.
Right.
Okay? So I should be able to take this funny money, okay? Slap that down and say, I want a gold coin.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? So we're dealing with a dollar that is worthless. This might be worth a penny.
Right. Right.
Okay? So what they've done is they've stolen our labor. Okay? This dollar should give me a paycheck for $1,600.
Yeah.
They've stolen our labor.
Sure.
Not only have they stolen our country from us, they've stolen our labor and our value.
That's because you have politicians instead of business people running Congress.
So that's why we
It's
need
mostly
to go
lawyers.
back to
It's lawyers.
what worked.
But it's people like Obama who have no real experience. Joe Biden never had a honest day's work in his life.
Never,
Never
ever.
one of them did.
And he's a plagiarist to boot.
Yeah. So I mean, my Secretary of Commerce would be what's his name in New York?
Here's
Trump, Donald Trump. I'll have him he'll do the negotiation with the Chinese.
Well, you have to get past the narcissism.
Yeah. Well, it's tough, but it can be done. But I tell you, it's a disaster. But I think I don't know if you like my idea, but I think conceptually it's the right answer. That everybody, it's a common cost we pay our equal share, and get the federal government out of the tax business.
Absolutely.
It's there.
Steve, until you figure out how much it is, and then,
I know, I mean, it's $13,000 a person today. We have to pay down the national debt. We have to fix Social Security and Medicare first. It's too much. We'd have a right. We couldn't have. There's a lot of people who couldn't pay my $13,000.
that's everybody, a child.
Right, but that's what they're spending.
But people don't, okay, so we need to start with the spending.
You got to get spending under control.
Because otherwise, I mean, if you ask my 18-month-old granddaughter to pay $30,000.
No, I ask her parents to pay it. But the point is for you to get after your congressman and say, hey, cut spending. And everybody's going to be in their office telling to cut spending.
Well,
and that's why this is I
as
think.
long as people can vote in somebody who will allow access to public lodges.
Well, that's what we have to get out. We have to get out those people. We have to get them back to spending. Get the spending back to constitutional limits.
Right.
And then pay down the national debt, and then go to my system.
You understand that the BBA would legalize their illegal spending, and that's why we've got to stay away from it.
BBA is.
Balanced budget amendment
Oh,
would actually legalize their illegal, it would legitimize all the unconstitutional spending they're doing.
I never looked at it that way, but I guess.
You better look at it, because it's horrible.
Don't want it.
Any amendment.
You can't, you know, we had my congressman.
We don't need to amend the Constitution, we need to enforce.
I had my congressman in a meeting, in a town hall meeting last week. And he was talking, she was showing the federal budget,
Who is it?
Phil wrote. And he didn't show it the right way. I mean, I redid it for him in front of the audience. I said, listen, I said, the 3 point, you all know about sequestration. You know, if they don't come to some budget agreement, the military gets cut. Military, as they call that sequestration. I said to my congressman, of the $3.8 trillion of spending, fully over $1 trillion of that is pure welfare programs, including refundable tax credits. $1 trillion out of $3.8 trillion total spending is welfare.
They call that mandatory.
They call most of that mandatory.
And half of it is illegal immigrants.
Right.
Enumerated powers, they call
Okay.
discretion.
$1 trillion of welfare. Okay. If you had a problem in your household, besides cutting out your luxuries, would you cut back on welfare? Would you cut back on your charitable contributions? Okay. I said to Phil Rowe in front of the audience, I said, tell me why sequestration wasn't made, the cuts made to welfare, not to the military that protects us.
Thank you.
You know what he says? He says, this is the best I got out of him. Oh, we'll look at that too.
Oh.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Did you know that when illegal aliens need benefits, that they're not even citizens here, but they don't look at the benefits they're getting and call that an income?
Well, I understand. They get welfare.
Yes.
Oh, you know, I think this is right. It goes back to another major issue, which is there's two other big issues. One is the interstate commerce, and the use of the word regulate is wrong. It's really bad. They mean facilitate, not strangle to death. And second is immigration. I don't study that issue, but I do know enough to know that the Constitution says that you're a citizen if you're born here, comma, as long as you're subject to the jurisdiction of. So I think now don't hold me to this, but I think we have the absurdity is that the female Mexican ambassador is in Washington D.C. and she gives birth. Her child is clearly not a citizen, but some illegal they sit on the border in Mexico until the 7th month. They take a bus to the hospital in Dallas. You pay for them to give birth. Their kid's a citizen. Everybody else is a citizen, the whole family, and they all get welfare immediately.
It's a usurpation of the real meaning of the 14th Amendment.
Oh, the system is completely screwed up.
The original thing said if you're not a citizen, if you're a citizen of another country, is what that meant, you're not a citizen here. That child is a citizen of Mexico. And I don't know, explain to me how we have such a thing called dual citizenship. You can only be loyal to one country.
That was in the 70s.
Okay, so, but that basically, well, no, you know, to be president, you must be, you must be, right.
Yeah, native born, but not natural born. But people
Yes.
don't realize it.
Okay,
And we're all lucky.
let's see if the clock is running up.
I get paid by the hour.
Yeah,
We've got time.
We've got time. Okay, officially, let me close the meeting
Okay.
down, and then everybody who wants to talk to Steve afterwards can.
By the way,
go ahead.
for those of you who I gave my 2-page executive summary that refers to the full paper, which is on the internet. And if you want,
I got your internet web.
yeah, I also gave you all of my slides. I gave Kelly all my slides. So,
Yes.
So I just have an
and
announcement.
call me if you want to.
I just have an
Where are you
announcement to
at?
make.